Zaczynać. Szymon, siamo tutti interventi, c'è anche il ministro, quindi possiamo iniziare.
Ok, però non c'è manca l'ambasciatore della Repubblica della Slovacchia.
Iniziamo.
Dobbiamo chiamare
il ministro che...
Ok, dobbiamo chiamare Agnieszka. Allora, facciamo cambio.
Sì,
ok.
io sto qui e poi iniziamo.
Ok. Possiamo lasciare questo tutto a posto.
Come sta? Mi metto qui, se no qui. No.
Così stiamo bene, no? Stiamo bene.
Sì, stiamo bene. Sì, stiamo tutti. Ok, microfono? Dobbiamo provare al microfono? Oggi senza? Ok, quindi tolgo la mascherina. Ci sentiamo già? Roberto, już wszystko się słyszą? Good morning, everyone. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an immense pleasure for me to welcome you at the webinar Energy Transition and Security, the position of V4 Group, and on European Green Deal. The webinar has been organized by the Embassy of Poland in Rome in cooperation with Diplomacy Festival and V4 partners and friends, Embassy of Hungary, Embassy of Slovak Republic, and Embassy of Czech Republic. I would also like to take this opportunity to convey the warmest greetings on behalf of Ambassador Anna-Maria Anders, who due to health reasons cannot be together with us. We are happy to physically host at the Polish Embassy Giorgio Bartolomucci, General Secretary of the Diplomacy Festival, Luca Tabasso, a journalist, Quotidiano Energia, who will moderate the webinar, His Excellency Adam Kovács, Ambassador of Hungary, His Excellency Jan Sot, Ambassador of Slovak Republic, Milan Tus, Consular of the Embassy of Czech Republic, and other colleagues from V4 embassies. I am glad that despite the current epidemic situation and overwhelming sense of uncertainty, we can hold this online event together with the representatives of all V4 countries, as well as with our Italian friends. Of course, we would love to host you all here at the Polish Embassy, but this is a demanding moment, so we must firmly state safety first. I hope that the experience of cooperation in such challenging times cements even more the bonds between V4 countries, as well as V4 relations with the Italian partners. This is what I wish for all of us in the light of the ongoing Polish presidency of the V4 Group. The V4 Group, whose history can be traced back to Visegrad Congress in 1335, attended by the rulers of Hungary, Bohemia, and Poland, who met to settle long-standing controversies and intensify cooperation between their kingdoms, was established on 15 February 1991 to facilitate eliminating remnants of the communist times and overcoming historic animosities between Central European states, as well as to promote their accession to the EU and NATO. Successful cooperation, however, did not cease upon completion of initial goals, and next year we will celebrate 30th anniversary of V4. Nowadays, the group collaboration covers such a diverse range of fields as culture, science, education, tourism, transportation, internal security, defense, energy, and environment. At the same time, the V4 is vitally interested in deepening ties inter alia with the countries of Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership. The V4 format is, however, by no means meant to be an alternative to the EU integration, It is a not institutionalized platform of dialogue and cooperation. This similarity of historical experiences and socio-economic proximity foster facing together common challenges such as the complex issue of the energy transition. I am delighted that today's webinar paves the way for the eminent experts from each V4 state to present to our Italian friends their country's perspectives, their hopes and concerns. Effective dialogue is not about avoiding difficult topics, and mutual comprehension is the first step to compromise and cooperation. I truly wish today's webinar gives us important food for thought. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Giorgio Bartolomucci, the Secretary General of the Diplomacy Festival. This year is the 11th edition of our festival. And I would like to thank the V4 countries to have helped us to organize this webinar. And our collaboration with your countries has been all the years of the festival very, very strong and also very efficient. So I would like to thank the embassies in Rome, the V4 embassies that have been for another year, another edition, very, very collaborative. The topic of this year of the festival has a very strong title, Reset Control, as to say that the COVID pandemic has really changed many of the paradigm, many of the rules of the game. And we think that nothing will be the same after. We have to start talking about new paradigm, new governance, new models, maybe for covering better for the future. The particular topic of today is within the Green Deal and the energy transition team. And one general question that the festival is posing to the different countries is if Europe is answering to the expectations of the citizen. So this is mostly our major theme. And of course, the COVID pandemic has increased many of the problems that we were discussing in the past. And energy transformation, including the climate change, is maybe one of the most important for the youth and the young generation. We are connected to several universities in Rome today, and I will collect 3 questions from the one that will be arriving from the web in order to give you a perspective of this public of young future professionals and what they expect to know about the position of the V4 and opinion on the Green Deal and your policy. Thank you very much, and I hope that this webinar will be really food for thought for the people that is following us on the web. Thank you. Luca Rabasso is the journalist that will moderate the session. He is from Quotidiano Energia, a very well-known and respected magazine in Italy that is only concentrated on energy issues.
Hello everybody, so we have now the institutional speak of Monsignor Thomas Drafni, Head of the Department of Science and Faith of the Pontifical Council of Culture. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Ambassadors, dear and distinguished participants, great pleasure on energy transition and security. And I would like to express to the embassy, Polish embassy in Rome, to organizers for the Council for Culture in this important discussion. Well, since the publication of the letter Laudato Si 5 years ago, there can be no doubt about the policy, environment, and care of our country. And the attention that the
Excuse me for a moment, but as audio is not very clear, we have to stop the video because we are afraid that the line is not enough strong. So we try to stop the video and we ask you, Monsignor, to continue your discussion.
Yes, the good thing would be to use the microphones because maybe there is a feedback that causes some.
Przepraszam, powiem po polsku. Księże prałacie, prośba o wyłączenie wideo, dlatego że jest słaby przekaz i wydaje nam się, że jeśli nie będzie obciążona linia, to będziemy lepiej księdza słyszeli, bo bardzo przerywa, źle słyszymy.
Okay. Now maybe it's better.
Much better.
Okay, good. So technology is good, but has its own limitations, unfortunately. So the attention that policy pays to ecological issues, of course, includes concern about and also the impact of activities on the environment. And so the problem of in-house and sources widely. And almost at the very beginning of the political lecture, Pope Francis said that there is an urgent need to develop policies so that in the next few years, the of carbon dioxide and other polluting gases drastically reduced. For example, substitute for fossil fuel and developing sources of renewable energy. And I think that the ambitious EU project, the European Green Deal, which aims to make the climate neutral by the earth, is certainly an idea that responds to the sensitivity and the needs of today. When we read the document developed by the Commission that describe the areas and ideas behind well, we can say from idea point of view, speculative point of view, we can be truly satisfied with operations and commitments. Among many statements underlined by the EU document, especially those against a number of environmental challenges on commitment. There are few I'd like to express. Introducing document, describe it as a new strategy that aims to repair and prosperous society with a modern resource-efficient competitive economy where there are no net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050 and where economic growth is decoupled from years. And in the same document, we can find another statement that says it also aims at the health and well-being of citizens from environment, and at the same time, this transition must be just and inclusive.
Monsignor Trafni, I'm sorry, you hear me? Monsignor Trafni?
Yeah?
I'm sorry, but we cannot hear you. So we better pass to the next intervention. We're really sorry. Maybe later on, if we get the line again, we come back to you. Is it all right? Can you hear us?
With sometimes some interferences, but I can hear you.
We would like to
But definitely there is an echo, there's a feedback, because probably some microphones are active. So it would be important mute so we can follow each other.
Księże prałacie, czy ksiądz nie słyszy?
Tak, tak, ja słyszę wszystko.
A przepraszam bardzo, ale niestety nie słyszymy księdza. Znaczy jest tak przerywane wystąpienie, że niezrozumiałe. Także jeśli ksiądz pozwoli, to byśmy przeszli do następnego wystąpienia. Natomiast spróbujemy może technicznie rozwiązać i potem byśmy ponownie się połączyli z księdzem. Bo niestety w ogóle za słabe jest połączenie i nie słychać.
Okej. Ja bym sugerował jedną rzecz. Istotne jest, żeby mikrofony uczestników wyłączone, bo są konferencje, bo po prostu generuje to feedback i później no, to ma wpływ też na jakość odbioru. No dobrze, to powiedzmy nie ma problemu. So I don't know, should I continue or we should skip my presentation and go to the next speaker so the moderator could maybe could give us some indication on that.
No, I think now the embassy turned off the mic, and I think we could hear you much better.
Good.
So maybe try again, and it will be fine.
Okay. So what I said. So reading the document on, I mean EU document presenting the European Green Deal. It looks very nice, and definitely we would embrace a lot of statements that were presented and let's say introduced as their ideological part of this document. The fact that the EU wants to transform into a fair and prosperous society with modern, resource-efficient and competitive economy. The fact that there is a will to generate the reality with no net emissions of greenhouse gases in 2050, and where economic growth is decoupled from resource use, but also the idea to protect, conserve, and enhance the EU's natural capital and protect the health and well-being of citizens, at the same time to provide for transition that must be just and inclusive. And I think that everyone will embrace those ideas and statements, and definitely when we are reading this, there are several areas that require close attention. We have no time to explore them, but the transformation into a fair and prosperous society, conserve and enhance the EU's natural capital, and protect health and well-being of citizens. Those are the most relevant one. And of course, the putting attention of the justice and inclusiveness, where people are considered the very first area of interest and action, it's very interesting and very important. And because it's obvious for us that nobody wants to live in a polluted and damaged environment. We all want to live on a clean and safe planet, which was before us and will be after us. And nobody wants to see his or her own children watching and suffer from environment-related diseases or to live in devastated surroundings. So this is very clear. And this should really push us into a new direction where the social and cultural parameters probably need change. As a matter of fact, we need to reconsider contemporary models of economic growth. This is the idea behind Pope Francis' commitment to introduce within the Laudato Si. And maybe we need to make a courageous choice to possess less in order to gain more in terms of happiness, more in terms of better health, talking about pandemic issue. It's really in this case very important and challenging, or maybe in terms of more satisfying life. And personally, I have no doubt that the topic of today's discussion, energy transition and security, is a particularly sensitive one. Energy in every society, we know that perfectly, represents one of the most important fields of strategic interest and importance. And every country, this is something that we all know, and we need to stress on that. Every country has a right to assure its own energetic autonomy. Transitions in this field, for this reason, are not easy and really will challenge the real capacity of the European community to act with justice and inclusiveness, as it is declared in this document. So Pope Francis shows a lot of optimism in his encyclical letter when he expresses his belief that men and women are still capable of intervening positively to protect and preserve the beauty of our planet and to secure a better home for generations to come. So I think I am really happy that embassies organize this webinar trying to reflect and to discuss this topic, which is particularly relevant for our region. I am Polish, so to some extent, although I represent the Holy See, to some extent I feel it also as an important challenge for our nations. So while I express again my appreciation for this invitation, I would like to really congratulate the organizers for the choice of the topic and assure you that all that I look forward to following the discussions and really to see if we can have a common ground of mutual understanding in this field, but at the same time, if the European Union is able to provide for suitable response for the emergencies and needs in countries that are not maybe on the level of development and industrial, let's say, activities like other European countries, like Germany, France, or others. And really, I am very interested to hear solutions and the discussion. Thank you for the invitation, and the best wishes for this huge commitment to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monsignor Trafni. So I agree, it will be very interesting to hear the position of the 4 countries of the Visegrad Group about the Green Deal and the energy transition. But first, I would like to say shortly how we got here. We now have the so-called 2020 target. That means 20% reduction of CO2 emission and 20% share of renewables in energy consumption and 20% reduction in energy consumption through efficiency. The European Commission with the Clean Energy Package set the target to 2030. At the beginning, it was 40% reduction of emissions. That means the same percentage of the 2020, the doubling the reduction. After that came the Green Deal. The Green Deal now has set, the Commission has set a 55% reduction. That translates in targets for efficiency and renewable very close to 40%. And so it is a very big challenge. And the European Parliament proposed an even higher target of 60%. And now the European Council is discussing its position on the subject. So, what is the position of your 4 countries? I will start with Poland, with the Undersecretary of Minister of Climate, Czetwertyński. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Just a question to start. Do you think this is a 55% reduction in emission is a transition or a revolution?
Good.
I think the whole transition to a climate neutral economy is certainly a huge challenge, and for all of us in Europe, it's our common ambition in Europe to become climate neutral by 2050. And I would say it is probably the most ambitious project we have had for a long time in Europe, maybe the most ambitious ever. It will require huge changes in all sectors of the economy, not only in energy, but also transport and also what we eat and the way we live. It will require very significant changes, and the targets for 2030 are only one step in that direction. But from my perspective, even more than the target for 2030, what is important is the measures we are really going to set to make sure that we can deliver this target. But let me start by thanking the Polish embassy and our colleagues also from the V4 embassies for the organization of that discussion together with the Diplomacy Festival. I think it's very timely and it's a very good occasion for all of us V4 countries to give a few perspective on the European Green Deal. As Monsignore explained earlier, we all have our specificities nationally, and this is, I think, important to understand how we can move together towards climate neutrality. I think in this regard also the encyclica that was written by the Holy Father on talking a lot about the topic of climate change, Laudato Si, what was it now, 4 years ago already, is indeed very inspirational for many of us, and a good indication also of how these subjects are intertwined with also our faith, which is a very strong component, as you all know, also of the Polish culture. Mr. Bartolomeucci started by asking, is Europe answering to the expectation of the citizens, and as this being the motto of the festival. I remember that before the pandemic, there was a quite detailed analysis that was done in the UK, not in the whole EU. It was done in the UK about what people were ready to do for climate change, and 80% of the people were saying they want to do something for climate change. and then they tested a number of measures, and none of the measures had the support of more than 50% of the population. But it was also interesting to see that you have very huge differences between for instance, age. And I remember there was a significant number of older citizens that were ready to reduce their amount of traveling that they were doing, and but on the other hand, they were not ready to reduce their consumption of meat. And if you were looking at younger citizens, it was the exact opposite. They were not ready to reduce the amount of traveling they were doing, but they were ready to reduce the amount of meat they were consuming. So I think it is really difficult, obviously, to be answering to all these expectations. And I think that the pandemic obviously has changed a lot. And we took over the presidency of the V4 as Poland in the middle of the pandemic. Our motto is back on track, is to try to get us to work together towards recovery, but also to give a new impetus to regional cooperation on many European Green Deal initiatives, and to make sure that the voice of the V4 countries is heard in Europe. And we deeply believe that we can indeed ensure future climate-friendly development, and also at the same time respecting all the national circumstances and energy security requirements. We think, when we've seen in the past on climate discussions how the cooperation between the V4 is important. We've seen that lastly during the European Council that adopted yesterday evening their conclusions on climate, setting the date for the decision on the 2030 targets for December, and we're glad that the cooperation that we have, and that the occasion that we have to present together the strong voice from the region. We see very clearly in the impact assessment that was done by the Commission how much this new targets will be impacting and will be particularly demanding for our region, in particular for countries with lower GDP, for countries with higher emissions, with more industry. That's exactly the case of the V4 countries. We feel all the criteria to be the countries that are bearing a significant burden in that transition, and we are discussing at the EU level how to design the tools that will enable us collectively to move in that direction. We also see in this impact assessment clear indications of the impact of these policies, for instance, on energy prices, and it's also something as Poland that we are looking at very carefully, how to make sure that this transition is a just one and is not creating an extra burden for the poorest and most vulnerable of our citizens. The Commission estimates that the current target would increase energy prices by 20% by 2030, and that the higher target of 55%, which they are proposing, would push up that increase even as high as 28%. And so we think it will be very crucial also to be answering to the expectations of citizens, to ensure social acceptance of these policies, to design instruments that will address the risk of an increased energy poverty. There are many other elements that we will need to agree on at European level to move towards these 2030 targets. But in Poland, we are also working nationally on our energy policy, and this giving this new impulse to the transformation of our energy system. We are at this critical juncture in our history where we have to take strategic investment decisions for the future of our energy system, because of the age of the energy system that we have inherited from the past decades, and we want to build a new energy system of the same size as the current one that would be fully zero emission by 2040, and that would give us, even by 2030, 1/3 of our electricity coming from renewable energy sources alone. Today we have about 80% that is coming from coal. So that this is really this progressive shift towards a zero emission energy system is really a huge step in Poland, and it will not come without also social challenges, and we are very much aware of that. That's why the first pillar of our energy policy is to ensure a just transition for all the regions heavily relying today on fossil fuel extraction, to make sure that we invest in those regions in new economic activities that will be able to provide good quality jobs for the people living in these regions, so as to make sure, as Monsignor was underlining earlier, that this policy is indeed improving the well-being of our citizens. And the third pillar also of our energy policy is to improve radically air quality with measures from transport to insulation of buildings and changing old coal-fired stoves to more climate-friendly solutions, in order to answer as well to these very strong expectations that we've seen growing in the past years in Poland, to improve air quality and as such improve, yes, the quality of life of our citizens. So this is very, very quickly to give you just a quick overview of our plans also at national level in terms of energy transformation. And but we remain also convinced that we have a unique opportunity now to use all the resources we are putting in the economy to recover from the crisis associated with the pandemic, and to make sure that we recover towards a better world by investing in new sectors, new technologies that will provide jobs, but also will help us to answer to all these societal and environmental challenges that we are facing. We're very glad to discuss further with you, and thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you. Just a small question, on the secretary. You said that you want to reach 30% of renewables to 2030. What about the rest? Because you have to phase out coal sooner or later, and maybe you want to build also a nuclear plant. How do you think to manage to keep the 100% of energy reducing coal?
Indeed, it's a very good question. I was very quick on the outline of our energy policy, but our reasoning is we want to make sure that we have the ability to provide a stable and affordable energy to our society, to our economy, but also to answer to deliver the commitments we have undertaken as Poland under the Paris Agreement. We were one of the first countries in the world to ratify it, even before the agreement entered into force, and to build that new zero emission energy system. We will be relying on mostly two sources: nuclear for the base load and the stable the capacity to produce stable energy, and also renewables, which are more intermittent energy sources. We have already quite a number of, especially in onshore wind, but we are working on a new scheme to support the development of offshore wind with the ambition to have almost 6 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030 and about 8 to 11 gigawatts of offshore by 2040. And also in parallel to continue to develop photovoltaic, in particular through programs for individual homeowners to encourage them to better insulate their homes, but also to switch to renewable energy sources, to install photovoltaic panels on their roof, with a tremendous success of the My Electricity program that we've developed in Poland, which with 1 billion zloty, that's about 250 billion euros, to support investments in new photovoltaic panels. We have, over the last 12 months, increased the amount of photovoltaic panels by 160%, in Poland. We are currently at the level of almost, about 2.6 gigawatts of photovoltaic panels, but we see this number increasing further in the coming years to reach between 10 and 16 gigawatts by 2040. So these altogether, these renewable energy sources and nuclear will be able to provide us with zero emission electricity, which will be key also for the transformation of a number of other industrial sectors.
Now the ambassador at large for energy security of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Hungary, Pál Ságberi. I would ask the same question. What is Hungary doing? What is the position about the Green Deal? And what is Hungary doing to decarbonize its economy and its energy sector?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me for this event, and also let me thank especially for the Polish V4 presidency for organizing this. So Hungary has very clear climate goals, and we are on the way to achieve them. Currently, we are at minus 33% of CO2 emission compared to the 90 level, which is the 8th best of among the EU countries. Of course, we are supporting the 2050 net climate targets. With basically two conditions and two principles we are saying to this. So first principle is that of course everybody knows it costs a lot of money, so those should pay for it, the additional costs who wrecked the climate up to now. And the second principle is that nuclear economy is part of the solution. It should not be excluded by the European energy policy and how to reach 2050 goals. You asked about the 2030 targets as well, and the new ambitions of Commission to reach 55%, so to level up the ambition. So we say that we are not against it by principle. You asked that whether it's evolutionary or revolutionary. It's hard to say, and it depends on which country. For which country it's evolutionary and for which country it's revolutionary. It's clear that it's hard for all of us. But we say that it's okay to go ahead with the 55 targets for 2030, but we say that all countries should take a minimum level also on a national level, because we see that so many countries are progressing well, and we see that the V4 countries are progressing pretty well compared to 1990 numbers. But there are some countries which sometimes they are the loudest to say that we should level further ambition, that who are not progressing well in those numbers. So, of course, the Green New Deal is a good vision, and we should work towards it. But we see basically two pitfalls which should be avoided, and of course. We are looking at the European Commission. There are a lot of concrete legislative steps to complete this vision, but we think these two pitfalls should be avoided. So basically, the first is that let's avoid that EU is becoming a climate island, an isolated climate island, because it would cost a lot for the EU vis-a-vis its global partners. So if we go ahead at full speed, it's okay, but we should also pull the main global partners to come with us, because it will have a high cost to the economy of the EU. And the second pitfall which we should avoid is to create new dependencies. In Central Europe, we know very well, and with my colleagues around the virtual table, we worked the last 10-15 years to get rid of the gas dependency, sometimes the oil dependency. So I mean, we should avoid to create new one, and we see that there is the risk of having a potentiality of a technical or a critical elements. Technology dependency can be created when we are discussing some also the big pictures, but also policy questions like the hydrogen issue. So what we are doing and what we are planning to do concretely when it comes to our energy policy, we see basically pretty much clearly for the way towards 2030 what we are going to do. The first is that there is a political decision in Hungary that the coal has to go before 2030. Of course, we are in a bit luckier situation than, for example, Poland from this, because we don't have such a big coal percentage in our energy. So we planned to phase out our lignite plant between 2025 and 2030. The second point which we will do is that we will have a replacement project for the current nuclear energy blocks. So we believe that nuclear is really the backbone of the decarbonization. Currently, it gives around 40% of our energy mix, and the current blocks are planned to be phased out in the middle of the 2030s. So we have a plan and a decision to have a replacement of the same capacity, the same level, and to keep nuclear in our energy mix until the end of the century. And the third is of course PV. PV is currently in Hungary somewhere between 1 and 2 gigawatts. the plan is to reach by 2030 6 or 7 gigawatts, and by 2040 around 10 gigawatts. And there's a tricky question. Is really the gas, and I think a lot depends on what will happen with the future of gas. As I said, we worked a lot to create infrastructures, and now we have a pretty much a good gas market from in this region. And we invested a lot in it. It would be really a pity to drop it out in the window. So I mean, this is not decided in this vision in the European Green Deal, that what to do with gas. But I mean, it has clearly in some cases positive contribution to the climate goals. The first example, if you want to change coal to gas, then it's clearly climate efficient. The second example is that if you use it in mobility for conventional fuels, there are some applications when it's really complementing the electricity mobility, the gas mobility. Poland is a good example. In using CNG and LNG for some parts of the mobility sectors. So basically, these are the policy thinking. We are, of course, we have a clear picture for the energy for 2030. We have a bit less clear picture what will happen between 2030 and 2050. And the second is the transport sector, where basically we have also a clear roadmap for the 2030. And of course, this is a rolling mapping, and we are rechecking our plans as soon as the technology evolves, as soon as new circumstance evolves. So that would be the quick and brief introduction from me to lay out our plans and how we see the future of the decarbonization from Hungary.
Ambassador, are you asking the EU for support to nuclear and gas?
So sorry, the question was, are we asking for?
Are you asking the EU for support, financial or regulatory support to nuclear or gas?
Yes, basically, we think that gas has a future in mobility that's very clear, and also we cannot get rid of gas because it's complementing the renewables. You know, the renewables are hard to estimate exactly that how they will create electricity, and everybody around the energy sector is looking for the holy grail, the energy storage, but it's still not coming. So until then, it's clear that the gas-fired power plants can make the balancing in complementing the renewables. And this problem is even or this question is even more burning as we are implementing more and more renewables in our region, because it creates new balancing needs, and gas is the so-called bridging fuel, but in our understanding it means that.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's see the floor to Juraj Sivacek, Ambassador at Large for Energy Security of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Slovak Republic. The question is always the same. What is the Slovak Republic think about the Green Deal, and what does it want to do for decarbonization?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and distinguished participants, and hello once again to everybody. I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers from the Polish V4 presidency and V4 embassies in Rome for providing us this opportunity to reach out to our Italian and international friends and experts on these important topics of European Green Deal and energy diplomacy. In the first part of my presentation, I will try to say a few words about our, that means Slovaks, climate protection efforts. In the second part, I would like to concentrate on our, meaning EU's.
Excuse me, we have some technical problems. We can't hear you clear. We have to check that. Switch off the video, please. Please try to switch the video because we shall see if it works without the video.
Is it a little bit better now?
Much better.
Very good. Perfect. So once again, in the first part, I would try to say a few words about our climate protection efforts. In the second part of my presentation, I will
Ambassador, maybe the distance from microphone should be different. May you try slowly, speak slower and a little bit farther from microphone?
How about now? Can you hear me well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Very good. So in the first part, I will try to concentrate on Slovak's position on climate protection efforts. And in the second part, if you allow me, I would like to concentrate a little bit on the EU's international efforts. Can you hear me?
Yes. When you ask us, we understand very well. When you start talking, we miss you.
Good. How about now? So in the second part, I would like to concentrate on EU's international efforts, since it's clear that the effect of life.
Very strange, Ambassador. When you ask us, it's perfect. When you start talking, the line gets all ununderstandable. Good.
Okay, so what can I do basically? Let me propose this.
Let's try to reconnect again.
I will try to switch to my mobile phone. Maybe it will go better. Okay?
Now it is good.
Now we can hear you very well.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good.
So can I continue basically, right? Okay, so once again, in the first part about Slovakia, the second part about our EU's international efforts. So speaking about my country, we are fully committed to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. And I think that despite the fact that there is still a lot of things to do, we are right on track to meet our climate obligations. The usage of coal for electricity production in Slovakia will be phased out by the end of 2023. The current level of renewables in our energy mix is slightly about 18%, with its further planned increase. To get stable, uninterruptible, and price competitive electricity, we further plan to rely on use of low carbon production. Actually, by phasing out coal and expected production start of 2 new nuclear reactors by the end of 2023, the production of electricity will be low carbon. Now, as to the latest European Commission's proposal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the EU by at least 55% by 2030, we think it's timely, but at the same time ambitious. As certain countries, if we like it or not, would need more institutional support for reaching this goal. The discussion at the expert and political level on this topic in Slovakia is still ongoing. Our general approach to this question is that Slovakia, as a country with developed industrial production capacities, is in favor of maintaining the right balance between increasing climate ambitions and developing the competitiveness of industry. At the same time, we are ambitious on this target. For instance, Slovakia national 2030 target for greenhouse gas emissions in sectors not covered by the EU emissions trading system is minus 20% compared to 2005, which is a huge reduction target. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can, yes.
Okay. So now let me shortly concentrate on international dimensions of our, meaning EU's climate efforts. In few points, decarbonization is a long-term process. The international context will be crucial for reducing emissions and achieving carbon neutrality. EU must set a credible example for global partners in fight against climate change. While trying to bring all to take their share of responsibility, we think that the EU should act by force of its example and leadership, seeking partnership and avoiding unnecessary force gestures or words. We think that the EU should approach foreign partners in promoting the Green Deal individually. Through the dialogue with foreign partners, should learn what will be the long-term regulatory framework within the EU and what will be the conditions of the trade with the EU. Because of the different natural conditions, the freedom of choosing the optimal energy mix should be encouraged. Lastly, leaning heavily on international law order, the EU should act hand in hand with international organizations, especially the UN. The failure of the UN Climate Change Conference in Madrid in 2019 has shown the importance of international cooperation and climate partnerships. We highly appreciate the EU Commission's current activities in creating the EU climate partnerships with the countries of the Western Balkans and the support the establishment of similar partnerships with the countries in the Eastern Partnership, the Southern Neighborhood, and other parts of the world. We are ready to support the EU's cooperations with global partners in the fight against climate change as well, and the implementation of the European Green Agreement with the aim of achieving a more successful results at next year's climate conference in Glasgow. So let me stop at this, and I look forward to the further discussions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now Václav Bartuška, Ambassador at Large for Energy Security, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. What is the Czech Republic doing for the Green Deal? And I will ask a question to everybody, maybe later on you can ask about the national plan for energy and climate that the European 2030 that the European Commission just evaluated. And The European Commission was not very happy about the plans of your 4 countries. So what can you do about it? How can you improve your plans?
Well, first of all, thank you all for the invitation. I hope you can hear me. I see no shaking heads, okay. So first of all, thanks to the Polish presidency of the V4 for the invitation. I will start by saying nothing surprising, which is that the Republic is behind Green Deal, just like everybody else in the EU. But I should immediately say that the biggest check or control of what we can really achieve is just a few months ahead. At the end of this year, we will finish 2020, and we can look back at the targets we set ourselves in 2007, the 2020 targets for 2020. And it's always nice to see politicians setting targets for 2050, because none of us will be here, I mean, in our positions in 30 years. It's always much more interesting to see how fulfilled our targets for much shorter term. So I think the EU should take stock of what we achieved in those 13 years from 2007 and how much is achievable realistically in years to come. So at the moment, we are all for it. You will not hear anything negative from any of us, but I think the reality on the ground in many member states is that member states do have problems to catch up with the tasks already set in stone in 2007. So we will see how we manage 55% reduction or 100% carbon neutrality by 2050. As for the climate change, climate plans and energy plans, honestly, I do think that when the COVID-19 ends, most of our plans in those areas will be worthless. I have no idea how Czech economy will look like years from now. I have no idea how German economy will look like 2 years from now. We have seen a drop for the oil demand, 55% in April this year. We have seen for the first time in history, negative oil price on April 20 this year, minus $40. I have no prediction how the economy in my country will look like next year. So I think we will try our best, definitely. We will keep our promises or try to keep them. But I think that we are facing difficulties on a scale which we did not imagine or could not imagine a year ago. But that's for the COVID-19. And as for the task we had ourselves when it comes to the energy transition or the Green Deal, I find it very important what was already mentioned by my predecessors, that we definitely should not find new dependencies or find ourselves in new dependencies because of new technologies or raw materials we will need. Just give you 2 examples. At the moment, many technologies we implement in Europe were invented in the US and built in China. That will be difficult to sustain 10 years from now. It's already difficult to sustain now with the 5G difficulties and the semiconductors and so forth. And there's a big question of the raw materials. The electrical cars are definitely nice. But if you look at the production of cobalt, which is from 3/4 produced in a single country, Congo, and much of it, roughly 1/3, is produced by child labor, I don't think that the European public will be too happy about it when they find out how really cobalt is produced. Also 2/3 of cobalt are refined in a single country called China. A similar story can be said about the rare earth metals. So I think that we will have to have a very hard look at the technologies we want to implement and the raw materials we need for them. Because we have spent, our countries definitely have spent last 30 years getting rid of dependency on a single supplier. We managed that fairly well. I don't think any of us wants to be in the same trap again with a different country or set of countries. So that would be my first input. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask Giorgio if there are any questions.
Yes, we have received several questions. I'm just choosing 3 of them. And the first one is coming from Antonio from the University of Gorizia. And he's asking that from the different positions, he has a question. Is there a common position in the V4 countries? He hasn't understood that. And the question is for Hungary and Slovakia. If you want to answer, or I can read the others, but first maybe you can answer to this. Slovakia and Hungary, do you have a common position? Do you feel that V4 has a common position on the topic?
Well, maybe I can start a little bit, and Paul, our Hungarian colleague, can basically say a few words. I think that the position of all V4 countries is very, very similar, although it's not necessarily coordinated or identical, but due to many factors, including the natural resources that are at hand, basically these countries' positions are very, very much similar. Paul?
Unmute yourself.
Switch on the microphone.
Okay, I should. Yes. So just to complete, Yuri, I agree with that. I see a clear V4 position. When you try to create energy policy of whichever country or EU, then you have to balance between three factors basically. The first is the energy security, the second is sustainability, and the third is affordability. I think we have a common understanding here in V4 that affordability and energy security is very important, and they go first, and then we are looking at sustainability, and this is pretty different from more developed Western European countries who has basically in some example that in Germany and the Netherlands, they pay double or the 3 times more for the energy than in our countries. So it means that we have to look at this whole thing from a different perspective. So I think that's first a common platform at first, and the second is that we believe that all of us. That the main elements are the same. What we believe is that nuclear is important. That without nuclear it costs much more, and it's a proven technology, and that's a backbone of any energy system. And of course, to go ahead with those technologies which are basically based on what we have here. What we have here as natural resources, what we have here as technology knowledge, and first to use on these. And I see that PV is also a common position or a common policy tool, or what we are all looking for, and basically our struggles are also the same, and they are pretty much linked to the question of natural gas, which is an unresolved question for all of us, like I said. So what should be exactly the future of it? So I don't really see big differences. Maybe the rhythm, maybe just the rhythm, that who can do what first, or who can do what is the second step. But I see that there is a common understanding in V4, even without having too much events like this, and we didn't have a lot of opportunity to discuss these issues with my colleagues. So that's why I'm grateful for this, and I see that we have basically the same position on these questions.
Another question comes from Paolo from the Normale Pisa University. And the question is for Ambassador Bartuska. And he is asking, he says, to keep the temperature increase under 2 Celsius degrees, we may have to choose, we may have to reduce low-cost flights or the use of private cars. Do you think that this is possible for the EU to take political initiative in this direction?
That's an excellent question, and I think you touched something that most European politicians don't want to really discuss. If you ask in public opinion polls in Europe what cars Europeans want, about 80% of public across Europe says, I want a small, energy-efficient car. That's the public face we have. And then you have the numbers. Last year alone, 1/3 of all new cars sold in the European market were SUVs, the big, flashy, public utility vehicles. So people do say something when they're asked in public opinion polls. They really do something else with their money. And I think it's the same, very much same with the flights, exactly what the Polish minister mentioned. The willingness of people, for example, to limit their own flights or travel, or the consumption of meat, that's very, very personal. I think that European governments are afraid to touch this subject really hard. We have seen the French Gilets jaunes when they only tried to raise the price of gasoline a few cents. So yes, limiting the low-cost flights would help. I think that COVID-19 is actually doing a lot of work for us right now. But I also think that many Europeans want to get back to the life which was a year ago. So how to limit that? You can do that with taxes, with regulation. It will be a difficult fight. I mean, it's much easier to tax or regulate companies or factories than individuals, the citizens, because people who do vote. I have no answer.
The last question is for Poland and for Monsignore Trafni. Europe accounts more or less 10% of the global consumption of primary energy. What are we doing to help developing countries that must grow and use more energy in their transition to clean energy?
Well, I can say what the Catholic Church is doing in many parts of the world, especially in developing countries, where through Caritas Internationalis, through work of missionaries, are introducing and helping small communities, especially those more vulnerable, to switch from, for example, fossil fuels, or from let's say traditional way of cooking into, for example, new technologies or devices that will allow them to be more green. But of course, the message that was launched through the Laudato Si is only, let's say, inspirational. The Holy See really has no power in terms of, let's say, pushing countries into or global community into specific direction. We can only suggest and encourage people to start to think about the issue of ecological emergency, and also about the style of life that we have in developed countries, which is far away from the lifestyle of those populations in undeveloped countries. And to some extent, the impact that church has through schools, universities, and parishes spread around the world, which are deeply engaged in teaching people and trying to help them in solving problems related to environmental crisis. It's a strong commitment, but it's not enough. With no participation, or with no strong participation of global community, we will always be facing the same problem. People in poor countries living or relying on, let's say, tools and means that developed countries abandoned or consider useful anymore. So to some extent, it's difficult to have numbers, to give right now numbers. I am not able to give concrete numbers of the commitment that the Caritas Internationalis and the Catholic Church provides for undeveloped populations. But at the same time, I think that the most important thing is really to raise awareness and to find out, to build bridges among societies and countries, to find out the best solutions that will really benefit the humanity and will provide for better future. So that's the commitment. And it's not easy, because we can see here, I mean, to be honest, I mean, we are the Vatican is a very small country, and we are dealing with problems, how to replace, for example, fossils, how to introduce, for example, electric cars. Can we do that? Can we, for example, impose certain rules on employees of the Holy See? Can we, where mostly they are Italian citizens or they live in Italy, can we introduce regulations that would constrain people to behave differently? From our perspective, for sure, educational challenge is the most relevant to help people to develop new habits and to behave differently, starting from the use of water, starting from the use of let's say glass instead of plastic and things. This is not easy, even for such small reality like as the Vatican. So if we are trying to extend this discussion to continents like Africa or, for example, Latin America, these issues are much bigger and distributed on different levels. So definitely the Catholic Church is committed to help people and to especially to solicit a global commitment towards ecological emergency and towards new solutions.
Thank you very much. And the same question, I forgot to say, that comes from Gianpaolo from the Rome University, is for Poland.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will, if you allow, I will try to address quickly all the questions that were asked, because I find they're interesting also from our perspective. So on but I promise to answer in more details on the last one. So very quickly on the first two, I think on the common position of the V4, I think a very common strong element that there is between our four countries is that we have had in the past a similar experience when we saw attempts to impose a vision of the world and some ideology that would solve everything and would be an end in itself. And we saw that it doesn't really work that well. And so we are saying, okay, that's the target, that's where we want to go. But if we want to go there, it's not enough to have an ideology that we need to go there. We need to have a plan and a clear idea of what are we going to do to get to climate neutrality? What are we going to do to reduce our emissions by 2030 by 55%? And that is probably a very strong common element between ourselves, that this call for a realistic and down to earth approach to make sure that our promises don't remain on paper, that we actually deliver on the targets that we are setting. Secondly, on the transport issue, I think it's as I said that in my intervention, but very important that we don't waste time for reductions by focusing only on one sector. All sectors need to contribute, including transport. On the specific issue of aviation, as Poland, we suggested at the beginning of this year to end free allocation for aviation. We think there is no real risk of carbon leakage, because if you are flying from Warsaw to Rome, you're not going to be flying from Warsaw to Pekin and then to Rome. So it's the risk of carbon leakage in aviation doesn't exist. And finally, on your last question, I think it's a very interesting one. And again, we have a very interesting experience as well when we look at our role within the EU and then at our role as Poland in the world, and we combine this double experience, say, of being relatively poor within the EU and relatively rich within the world, and that gives us a good understanding of both perspectives on this issue of development. I mean, we saw that in July when we were discussing the budget, and you had very strong push from the so-called frugals to reduce the budget, and it ended up dividing the Just Transition Fund in half and say, okay, we are going to support the transition to climate neutrality, but we're just going to give half of the money we were assuming we needed for that. And at the same time, you have the same countries today saying, oh, we should do more for climate. So we should do more for climate, but we should spend less on climate. So there is a bit of a contradiction, and you see that very clearly also in our EU discussion. And we have a very good understanding of these changes as well that developing countries are facing in this transition, because we have a relatively lower GDP. This transition is a very capital-intensive transition. We're moving from an economy where we are producing energy using relatively a lot of labor and resources to renewable energy or nuclear that are basically have no operating costs or almost no operating costs in case of nuclear, and but require very, very hefty investments up front. And when you have a society with a low GDP per capita, it's the same with cars. It's maybe an electric vehicle is costs lower overall, but you need to pay more to buy it at the beginning. So if you don't have that capital, the transition is more challenging. The third thing on this international perspective, also from the perspective of our EU policy, it makes obviously no sense for us to act, as was pointed out in the question, as we account for 10% of global electricity consumption and about the same of emissions. I mean, if we introduce policies that are successful at reducing emissions from produced in Europe, but we keep on importing emissions in our imports, it makes no sense. I mean, it defies the purpose of our policy. Overall, we're not addressing the challenges of climate change, which is a global challenge, and we need to make sure that our policies will drive down emissions in Europe, but will not lead to increased imported emissions. and we need to explore tools, and there are a number of ideas how to do that. And final point on this international dimension, I was saying we are relatively poor in Europe and relatively rich in the world, and although we certainly do not have the capacity of the Italian budget in this regard, but we are also doing our share. We are engaging with other countries to help them in their transition. We are one of the largest contributors, for instance, to the adaptation fund. Europe, generally speaking, is the main contributor to the adaptation fund, and Poland is one of the largest ones. We're also contributing to helping the transition in the transport sector through programs coordinated with the World Bank, and we're helping regions in Africa, in India, in Ukraine to prepare plans to green public transport or to green the transport system in these regions, and to help on the way of the transition. So, commensurate obviously to the means of our society, we're also trying to use these good experience we have in Poland to help other countries in the world in their transition.
Thank you very much. We are perfectly on time. I have to say thank you to Monsignor, Ambassador and the Secretary, and to the Embassy of Poland. And so bye-bye, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.